Well, hello my friends. Welcome back yet again to another ICON video. So we're going to have a little break from the normal routine this week and a continuation of our anthology series featuring the history of ICON. It's high time to do a video that focuses on all of the ICON derelicts that we've built to date. They're kind of my happy place because I get to do stuff that I don't know, just a lot more creative, free-flowing. I'm able to explore different technologies, different mechanical equations, different aesthetics, different eras of design, and it's just fun as hell. Now, it's probably not the best business. In fact, it's certainly not the best business that we do from a responsible grown-up perspective. But as I've stated before, it's certainly my happy place. So without further ado, let's start at the beginning. The very first derelict that we built was, I didn't even come up with the name derelict. It was literally based on my simple vision of what I wanted to drive. So I was kind of tired of over-restoring stuff and then having to tiptoe around it and be super cautious and worry my kids are going to ding it or the dogs are going to scratch it, and being afraid to go down dirt roads, being afraid to go to the swap meet, go surfing, etc. So I was starting to think, this is going pretty far back. This is probably
I love how
08.
counterintuitive how it looks versus
what
how
would I
it
want?
feels.
I want a wagon.
I love this car.
I want something that I don't have to worry about. And the sort of nanoscent idea behind the ICON derelicts was simply that. I wanted all of the perversions of modernity with an Art Morrison chassis and updated powertrain and creature comforts. But I didn't want something that was so perfect that I was afraid to use it, because that just sucks. So I was actually visiting a guy. There was a guy on Craigslist who had an old Land Cruiser, an FJ40 for sale. So I was simply going out to check it out. Turned out the cruiser was crap, and I had no interest in it. But the guy had a really interesting horde of vehicles. So I noticed this really cool Chrysler Town & Country station wagon. Always loved the lines of those. They were made, what was it, from basically 51 to 54, had that general body style. 51, 52 had the flat glass split windshield, which I just think looks cooler. And as it turns out, I dodged a bullet there because you can't even find the windshields new for the wagon for the 53 or 54, as a buddy of mine discovered the fun way. So I just stumbled into it and I was like, oh, that's perfect. So I bought it. But then I did not like the front end. They're just kind of fugly. Now the interior on the Chrysler Town & Country was way nicer, higher trim level than the, say, DeSoto or Dodge versions. And it kind of had like an early luxury liner boat or rail car interior vibe, which someone told me years later is actually because the lead designer came from that world. And the TNC was kind of the upmarket version. So loved the interior, didn't like the front clip. Went to my local radiator shop to pick up some stuff for the biz. He had a 51 or 52 DeSoto 4-door, and it was kind of beat to piss, kind of a plain Jane, but that front end with that iconic grille, home run. So it was kind of sort of the same color. I bought it for next to nothing, brought it back, and that very night I realized and then tried removing the front fenders and hood and grille and all that, and it bolted directly onto the Chrysler. So once I saw that iconic DeSoto front end joined with the DeSoto body and interior, game on. I basically built it myself entirely. I had a little bit of help from Jimmy, who worked in the shop back then. And then years later, I've backed up because I'm not that good at electrical or exhaust personally. And I've had rock stars on my team who are way better at that stuff than I am, update the car. I've done a couple other updates over the years, driven the hell out of it, had all sorts of cool adventures and road trips in it. It's got about 40,000 miles on it, if I recall. It's got the earlier versions, 6.1 Hemi SRT8 fuel-injected V8, which I love because the aesthetic of that cast manifold so much better than the 6.4 plastic Fantastic. You get more power out of the 6.4, but this 6.1, I don't know what it is about it, but it's got some attitude. You know, we retuned it and dynoed and remapped the ECU and changed a bunch of things, but it worked out really good. Originally, I used the 545 RV tranny, which did not appreciate my copious burnouts and heavy acceleration. I know now not to use that tranny. They kind of suck. If your output is like 5 horsepower more than OEM, it's going to blow up. So years after I built it, I rebuilt the tranny. I blew it again. I said, all right, hell with this. And I put in good old-fashioned GM 4L85E modified, and that has served me quite well. So the patina and paint, including the Bondo splatter and stuff, is as I found the car. I did go ahead and brass plate that front tooth because I thought it was kind of fun, give it a cronk, a little bit of tude, and actually hung it under my buddy's deck on the beach in Malibu for about 8 months to accelerate the patina on it. The inside is the hide of the elusive Nagabeast, so it's stamped to look like alligator, kind of, sort of, but far from it. So I actually left that original. I did do full carpet and insulation. I did a high-end Bluetooth dedicated audio system, redid all the wood. And frankly, since I built it, I've been driving the hell out of it. Hardly have ever washed it. I just cleaned the windows, and that's kind of part of the fun. So it wasn't until that car was done and I got invited to the Art Center Car Classics show, and it won an award, and then it got invited to something else, won another award, and next thing you know, it was on the cover of Hot Rod that my dumbass went, oh, geez, maybe this is something I can continue to do with ICON, because in reality, the Derelict style is in line with what we do. It's revisiting classic transportation in a modern context, just with a little bit of funk and wabi-sabi style. So we decided to go ahead and start accepting orders because the phone was really ringing off the hook and emails were flying in. People saying, that's a really interesting concept. Could you build a this for me? Could you build me a that, or what have you? So the very next one we did was actually it's kind of a freak. It's a M37 Korean War era truck. That one was super fun. I'd say it wasn't as versatile as most of the ICON builds in that it still is a military truck, solid axles, leaf sprung. But we converted it to a turbo diesel with a 5-speed and an Atlas and Dana 60s and locking diffs. Redid some of the original military canvas and the correct material. Added a power inverter and a fridge and a bunch of stuff to make it more useful on the ranch where it was going to live. And that was a fun experience. The next ICON Derelict that we did was really a fun one. As a leathercraft geek, I've always loved fine alligator, and we found a guy who was a small-time tanner who knew everyone who had the wild-caught permits, and it actually took a long time, but we pretty much cleared out all of their archives of wild-caught large alligators, because when I sketched up the interior, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just having an idea, and I wanted to do like goat gut stitch and a lot of traditional ideas, but I didn't want the interior to be a billion panels of alligators. So that's why we used old, and wild-caught meant that, you know, they had more scars and imperfections, but for a derelict, it was super fun. So that was a 52 Chevy Styleline coupe. We actually found that pretty much abandoned at an old Air Force base. And beautiful patina, really fun, creative build. We did an LS3, we did the Art Morrison chassis, all those goodies, and that interior is just so gorgeous. I actually saw the car recently, and the interior is like even better than when we built it. It's aged just so beautifully. So right on the heels of the 52 Chevy came the Lincoln Coupe. It's actually kind of cool. The original owner was obviously an elderly gentleman, and he was going into an old age home, and he reached out to us and sent us good old snail mail with some photos of his car, you know, printed out old school, and he basically said, like, I want this to end up with you guys so that it can get a second life. And doesn't get screwed up, or at least screwed up the way we screw up, which fortunately he appreciated. And I just fell in love with it. So I bought it right then and there. I didn't even have a client for it. But as soon as we brought it in and we communicated to our customer base that we had it, a client commissioned the build. Original paint, again, epic patina, one of the best butts in the automotive industry. Arguably the 37 Zephyr or the 37 Nash Coupe might be a little bit cooler, but damn fine derriere, if I may say so myself. On that one, since it was a Lincoln, we decided to go all Ford. We did the 5-liter Mustang, what was, I guess, Gen 1 back at that time. Our Morrison chassis, again, had some fun with the interior. We made embossing plates and had this beautiful leather steamed and embossed to get this really cool kind of funky paisley 3D dimension value to it. Reconfigured the dash, taking advantage of the original controls and layout, hid the AC vents behind the original speaker grill, used the original factory heater controls. They're all Bakelite and super groovy to control the modern AC system. And that's a really cool car. That was a really fun one to build. Right after that, for a client who already had worked with us, we found a gorgeous 48 Buick Super Convertible. And a derelict is that it's all naturally processed Italian leathers, so it is not UV stable. So quite purposefully, to sort of add to the patina charm of a derelict, it will continue to fade, and you can see natural imperfections in the hide. But I don't know. To me, it makes sense. To the client, it makes sense. To some people, it doesn't, in which case we'll use aircraft or UV stable automotive and tinted reconstituted hides, but they're just not as sexy. On that one, we had some extra fun in the engine bay and dressed it up vintage. So we took a vintage Buick, what was it from? I think 442 Buick maybe, but big ass air cleaner for the carburetors, modified it to hide the plastic intake and everything and kind of dress it down. If my memory serves, we did an LS7 in that beast, and that was a really fun project to build. That car was featured up at Pebble Beach by invitation. We were super stoked, and it was kind of cool. And this has happened with other derelicts since, but it was like, going to a ball where everyone's wearing a tuxedo, and then there's the one dude with 7-day beard growth wearing a kilt and no underwear. So it was like super disruptive and fun, and I think people really gravitated given the diversity of what was there, and this being so different. People really embraced the style, and I think it helped us get the party started. So right after that one, a client who was inspired by that build also wanted a Buick, but with these derelicts, one and done, we never repeat. So we fortunately stumbled into a 1950 Roadmaster. Now the Roadmasters were the highest up level in that series over the Super. Gorgeous line, especially the 1950. There's not a bad angle on that car. And that was for a client who already had an ICON Bronco. And again, just like fun. Such a great build. Really loved it. Blue and brown tones. Again, had some fun with the interior on that one and used a really unique leather out of Mexico that kind of looks like, I don't know, a rhino or dinosaur or something funky, but it just really matched that car. And the color and texture was just perfect. And again, that's a car that I've seen again recently. In fact, it's traded hands and is now owned by a friend of mine. And that interior just looks kick-ass to this day. Just for fun, I got to thinking after the narration of that Buick interior, the kind of funky hide of the unknown beast. So I found some scrap up in the loft, and I made this jacket real quick for it. So it's kind of fun. I need to tumble it and wear it in, get some of the shine off, but super fun way to you kind of recycle the leftover parts. After the 50 Roadmaster, a client who loved my wagon wanted to buy my wagon. I did not want to sell it. I still have it today. And he wanted something similar, and we found him a really nice, beautiful, like warm skillet pan kind of patina brown wagon. And this time it was a 1954 DeSoto, and we got lucky on the windshield. And that one, really nice interior. I was starting to play with textiles, not just leathers at that time. And we came up with a really cool combination for it. And the client who commissioned that drives the piss out of it, sends us updates. We see him on Instagram, enjoying life in it. And that's always nice to see. It's super cool. Speaking of seeing icons create memories, I think the all-time, one of the top in seeing clients enjoy it would be the 67 Volkswagen bus that we built. Now, the client we originally built it for, she put it on a concrete deck area in her backyard and used it basically as a guest room for friends when visiting, which kind of bummed us out because we did a lot of mechanical work and dual AC and all sorts of fun stuff. So she eventually sold it and moved, and then we sold it to a dear friend of ours who's had several icons, who then another icon client who was local to him in Texas saw the car, fell in love with it, and when our friend Tony in Texas ran out of parking spaces because he had an icon old school Thriftmaster coming, he sold it to the new guy. Tons of stories from being a French bulldog party vehicle through to the current family. It's used for family outings, camping. They sent us some cool shots recently of it being the centerpiece for their Halloween celebrations this year, which was super cool. And that car's got, again, textile interior, super funky. It's actually new old stock fabric from old patio furniture that we stumbled into, and it came out really cool. The dual AC was the biggest pain in the ass in that entire build, but we got it working. It'll freeze you right out of the truck. Original client had us put a bunch of Star Trek things in there because that was something she was into. Fortunately, we're able to remove those and take it back to more traditional and get rid of those widgets and gadgets. No offense, Star Trek fans, but I never understood the relevance. Just me, maybe. After the bus, a dear friend of ours at Nike, who unfortunately has since passed away, ordered a 60 Willys wagon. I have always loved those, and Willys is such an interesting brand because they were kind of on their own little island with a lot less resources than the big guys, but they were well positioned after World War II to take advantage of the affinity and affection and experience that a lot of enlisted men had had during the war in that platform. And they quickly wanted to retool and do something for all those returning servicemen, and that was basically the Willys wagon. That's when she came to be. So two-door wagon, but still fairly easy access to the second row, plenty of storage. On this one, we decided to do a two-wheel drive configuration, but keep it at a fairly tall traditional stance. The interior is original, crazy, 1960. We had to repair some of the thread and stitch lines, but the rest of it was from the factory. Even the wood slats on the floor were from the factory. The paint was original. And that one came out really cool. In fact, I kind of have, in the future, I'd like to explore the Willys wagons of that era just a wee bit more. I think it actually could become a viable series for ICON to do. But right now, we lack the bandwidth. We need more help. If you're a skilled fabricator, come on down, send us your resume. We are hiring. But anyway, I digress. After the Willys wagon, we did a 74 Volkswagen thing. These are super funky. They were only available for a couple of years. They were actually manufactured in Mexico. Personally, I had some cool old childhood vacation memories in VW things, including breaking down in the middle of nowhere when the battery fell through the rusted out floor. That was quite the adventure, but I always dug them, and so did the client who commissioned it. So we found this original yellow paint VW thing, and this was our first time we kind of dipped our pinky toe, or pinky, I suppose I'm illustrating, into the EV world. So we partnered with our friends at Derelict and utilized their trusted formula. We did add more batteries than they normally do. And that one was super fun. In fact, clients owned it now for several years. He actually, wait a minute. The guy who owns it now isn't the guy who originally we built it for. It was in the Pacific Northwest. Last I heard, it's now living in Mexico at a vacation property, and it's doing great, which is nice to see because the EVs kind of make me nervous when it comes to serviceability and longevity. But that one actually turned out really good and gave us the confidence that we needed to continue to adapt and adopt EV technologies, which are changing so quickly it makes my little brain hurt. But it's a whole new world, and we're going to be, as you know, exploring that more and more. Next came the 46 Oldsmobile. I call them barrel backs. A lot of people do because, again, super cool 40s, streamlined, modern, buttress, big old hips, and such a pretty, pretty car. Great dash. Again, on that one, we actually took a different style. Again, textiles. Really nice high-end leathers flanking the textiles. Textiles appropriate to the era, although not exactly correct for the exact model series. Killer patina. Client was more old school, leaning on his mechanical in a hot rod sense, not in a stock sense. So on that one, we did a drivetrain that's not really what we normally do. But it was super rowdy, super fun. That client owns that vehicle to this day and continues to make memories and go on really fun trips with it. So really like that build. Problem is I want to keep all the builds. Like every one I finish, I'm like, oh, that was my favorite. Let's do another one. And we keep doing them, and I keep wanting to keep them. But unfortunately, I'm not a wealthy man, so I need clients, and unfortunately, the clients don't put me in their will. Although the 52 Chevy guy claimed he did, and I sure hope that's the case, but he's probably goes to the gym more often, is younger than I, so I don't know how that's going to pan out. After the 46 Olds came the ever so magnificent 1958 Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud. That was a really interesting build, lots of technical challenges. First time we got into wood interior trim, which is a whole nother skill set. We partnered with Madeira Concepts, who we continue to work with to this day. They're just the masters in that space. That car was originally built for a client in Australia. So we had to work with the client's attorney who was skilled in homologation or import standards in Australia, which are notoriously difficult. That meant we had to keep sections of the original frame, which did not please me because the factory frame is literally like 2 layers of sheet metal spot welded to each other and then 2 C-channels stitch welded together to make the chassis, which seems asinine. They did do enormous X-braces through the center body, which really helped. So we left the majority of the original chassis and then laced in front and rear sections from our buddies at Art Morrison. We dressed the engine bay subtly, but down a bit, did custom valve covers that had the Rolls logo on it, and we hid the valve cover, coil packs and plastics and stuff as best we could. And that car is super cool. It ended up, how'd this work? It went from Australia back to the US. Then we sold it to a really cool guy, coincidentally with the same first name as the original owner, who then took it back to Europe, or took it to Europe. And then in Europe, I believe it spends most of its time, until recently, in Scotland and in England. And man, that guy knows how to drive his cars. He used it as the liquor and luggage escort chase car, chasing a vintage Porsche race car that he drove, I believe, through 7 countries in Europe, which is just insane. I don't even know how that thing cleared driveways and road conditions. Not the Rolls, but the Porsche. But it did. And he recently decided to sell it. And now the third owner, I believe, is relocating the car to Belgium. That one had such a beautiful interior. It was like a 2-tone green. We added a 3rd-tone green to the interior. Our vintage style wheels, a lot of hidden gizmos and creature comforts, but a very stock aesthetic for the most part. And whoa, that one pissed off the traditional Rolls-Royce guys, but it's kind of part of the fun. Next, it was time for another EV exploration. So again, for an existing client, these early Fiat 600s, I'm going to mispronounce it, but they're known as the Jardinero or Jardinero, kind of the gardener's car. I don't know the history there, but they're kind of cool. So they're like a two-door shooting brake version of the tiny Fiats of that day. It's probably the most conservative build that we've done in that we went through the mechanics, pretty much left them stock, refreshed everything, upgraded the suspension. I mean, not re-engineered it, but upgraded it, improvements to the brake and other peripherals, and really focused mostly on the EV science integration. That vehicle is still owned by the same owner. It spends most of its time in Southern California. Its principal duty is going from a design studio on Abbot Kinney in Venice out to the home in Malibu, and it served the client really well. So that one was really kind of neat. Next came the 49 Hudson Coupe. And that was kind of cool because we were building the Mercury Coupe around the same time as the Hudson. And those two, there's throughout history been a debate of which is the ultimate lead sled. And there's reasons to go one way or the other, but having the unique opportunity to get super intimate and take apart and geek out all the details between the two, I gotta say, I think the Hudson wins. Again, it's an offering from a smaller company, didn't have as many resources, but they really knew they had to elevate their offerings in the details. So that includes, I'd say, companies like Tucker and Hudson and Franklin, Graham, all the kind of orphan brands really knew they had to up their game on style and design. So everything down to the way the gauges light up and the continuity between every little knob and switch. You know, they weren't robbing parts bins from their high volume models because they didn't have any high volume models. So the design is just spot on. That one is an absolute beast. I upped my interior game on that one because this time I personally hand dyed the interior in what's called crust alligator. So that's no oils or pigments added, but fully tanned. And I literally hand painted every single tile on that with a variety of finishes from a company called Orion in Texas. And just that interior came out so sexy. Also, powertrain was fairly absurd, so it hauled ass and roasted massive burnouts. And that now lives, I believe, in, where is it? Somewhere in the South. Client loves it, still owns it to this day, and it's kind of the bar hopping rig. And there's lots of funny stories tied to that one, but he's kind of high profile, so I'm not going to share those. So again, as I mentioned, while we were building that, we were also building the Mercury Coupe EV. Now, because it was an EV and our third EV, we really wanted to dive deeper into that technology and address a lot of things that our two previous EVs in the industry at large in EV retrofits weren't yet doing. I hemorrhaged time, I hemorrhaged money, blessed with a super patient client that kind of knew he was going to be the sort of chipmunk prototype guy, and like we just felt like we were never going to finish it because the EV tech kept moving so quickly. I didn't want to deliver it because there was the latest and greatest, niftiest evolution of EV science coming to the plate. So we spent a fair amount of time backing up and evolving that car before we could even deliver it. We finally have delivered it. Client loves it. He's tearing up the roads with it. And that's a really pretty one. Custom leathers on the interior that I actually developed and had tanned myself. Really cool high-end home design, exterior patio furniture grade textile. And it's super fast, no transmission, so it just goes like a freight train. There's no shifts. It's super, super nifty. And then as of the time of this recording, the latest and greatest is the 300 SEL Mercedes Derelict that we built. So proud of that car. Biggest complication on that one was it was a unibody car, which we had to convert to a ladder frame, body on frame architecture to give us the performance we needed in the handling and comfort characteristics, and also not to rip itself in half because it has so much horsepower and torque. That car, hopefully you've seen the recent in-depth video of it, and the press has just been loving it. We've been doing road test interviews with media, and we just came back from the SEMA show where it was featured with Optima and got to take it out on the track, or at least my client did. I had to leave early. But that one's just magnificent. Again, back to the hardwood interior, unique exploration on the interior design, trying to keep it very, very, very stock and hide all of the modifications we did, and I think we nailed it. Like, you don't even notice probably 95% of the mods unless you've owned one of those cars and spent a lot of time in them. You wouldn't catch all the nuances. That leather is a really unique leather that Mercedes used back in the day, and we used the correct original surface coated veg leather with the traditional substrate layers and patterns and perforations and embossing patterns, and it smells so perfect, and that car was so lovely. I have to let the client have it here in a couple weeks, and that just makes me sad. So within the Derelict series, we also have built several Bronco and Thriftmaster Derelicts. We've yet to do an FJ. We'd like to, but generally the bodies corrode before the paint does. So I've honestly yet to see an FJ40 with killer patina, but a body that's not Swiss cheese. Plus our modifications that we do for the suspension, etc., are a bit invasive. We could do it to certain years, still be a lot of work. Intend to do one in the future if we ever come across the right FJ40 for the job. But we built 7 Bronco Derelicts. The Bronco Derelicts, as well as the Thriftmaster Derelicts, are rarely cost effective because unlike all the true one and done projects in the derelict and reformer department, we're able to utilize and therefore amortize a lot of the chassis engineering, which makes them more efficient to build. The first one we did was the Roadster, a 66 Roadster. That's the one we did that really cool mini doc of it out in the high desert on BLM land, running with wild Mustangs. And what an incredible experience that I'll never forget. My dear friend now, Shane Russick, was the director and photographer for that. And it's the first time we really worked together in detail, and it forged a really strong friendship. And the experience, the sound, the odor, running with a herd of wild Mustangs is something that I will always cherish. We used that little mini doc and a series of prints to help raise money for a charity that provides protection and resources for wild Mustangs in the United States, which are severely threatened. No horses were harmed in the series of that video, and no Photoshop was used. So everything you see, all that imagery, that really happened. It was such an incredible experience. Following up on the Roadster, we did several more Bronco Derelicts. We had BR number 71, which was just a beautiful one. And that one featured some really nice details. We had original paint, kind of a copper brown. The interior we did all refreshed, sort of in the old school design language. But that truck had a really cool kind of warm color fade patina to it going down to the primer, and really, really was lovely. And then right on the heels of that one was Bronco number 72. Again, original paint. Similar interior layout with a couple unique changes and design decisions made. We built that one with a bikini top as well as the removable hard top, and that one lives in Southern Cal and continues to create memories. The next one we did had a really cool back history to it. It was the grandfather of the guy I bought it from was a gold prospector, hunter, hobbyist. So this vehicle was pretty much, he lived downtown Los Angeles, but he pretty much only used this vehicle for his hunting and his gold prospecting. So we had a really cool picture that came with it of Grandpa back in the day. out doing his thing. And we left the original cosmetics on the exterior. Again, of course, geeked out on the interior, made unique design decisions, of course, with the client who commissioned it, who coincidentally is the same guy who commissioned the 71 300 SEL Mercedes. The truck came with an original set of tools that Grandpop used. So we used some of the leftover leather for the interior to make them a cool little tool bag to keep those with the vehicle, because, I mean, they're really an integral part of the story, so why not? Next was Derelict number 84, or rather BR number 84, a Derelict, and that was a half cab, pretty unique, removable half cab hardtop that you don't too often see in the Bronco world. Bench seat, kind of a low trim option truck. That one we built for a client that owns several of our ICON Bronco, distributed in different spots, different utility, different locales, different sports, different family adventures, yada, yada, yada. He's one of our favorite clients and always sends us pictures of his Icons out actually getting whooped on and used and enjoyed by the family, and facilitating getting to the favorite fly fishing spot or whatever it might be. And we really appreciate that. Next one is funny how many of them are blue. I wonder if there's something in the blue paint that is sort of an antioxidant, because it does seem we find more of the original paint Broncos in good condition in the blue color. Makes you wonder. This one, very nice. Again, the interior design and layout, we made decisions unique to this truck, differing from the last. This was the first Derelict Bronco we did with the Gen 3 Coyote motor. And that truck, last I heard, is in New York State. Belongs to a fireman who's a lovely guy. And then the most recent Bronco Derelict we did was Bronco number 91. This one went to the same dude that owns 84. And this one we did a even funkier interior where we did this cool vintage plaid insert from Relicate, in course with the brown bison hide. This one had an automatic tranny and lockers and yada, yada, yada. We've done 3 Thriftmaster or TR Derelicts. Getting hard to find those in any condition usable. Harder yet to find them with original paint and patina. In fact, I'm willing to compromise and take an early repaint with patina. The first one we did was TR number 7, and it was a 1949, actually a GMC, not a Chevy. It was a 5-window, a kick-ass patina. We left all the GMC trim and stuff on that one. We used a really unique leather and restyled the bench seat, which I'm not really inclined to do again, because even with sculptural changes to the seat and foam modifications, etc., it's still pretty uncomfortable. So I think I'm going to work more and more to try and just restyle our modern Glide Engineering split bucket bench thingamajigger seat, because it's just so much more comfortable. But that truck was a long wheelbase. We did a beautiful Horween leather. The gauges, we spent a lot of extra time on those because the patina was super cool. We didn't use our usual Dakota Digital, but behind the scenes, we worked with our buddy Shannon at Redline to restyle the original gauges, keep the patina, but hide all modern mechanical on the backside. Number 18, that one was really cool. Original paint, green, heavy patina. That one we did the 4-wheel independent suspension as well. And we did some reclaimed bedwood that was super, super sexy from an old barn. And left that one appearing as stock and as beat up as possible, except the client wanted a sort of ta-da, surprise contrast when you open the door and step into the interior. We concourse restored the interior. So everything bright and shiny and new polished stainless or chrome and fancy paint, etc. It was kind of neat. I don't know if I'd do it on mine, but I understand why the client did it. And I'm glad he gave us that unique direction to explore. Same with the engine bay. We fully refinished the engine bay and restored it. And that truck's just lovely as well. One more thus far. We did TR number 19, which was a Chevy. This one was a repaint, but an older repaint, kind of a cool, funky aqua style. On this one, we did go back to the latest gen of the Dakota gauges, but they worked well with the dash patina on the inside. It was really quite nice. We did the artillery style wheels. So that's it. Really not that many derelicts. There's such a labor-intensive project that we just can't do that much volume, and frankly, nor do we really intend to. We like to keep the derelicts, I like to think of them as like rolling sculptures, like they're high functional, usable art, and they combine so many different skill sets and materials and textures and techniques and in such a beautiful, cohesive and extroverted way. We have several more in queue, but I will not tease you with those. You'll see those coming up in the future as we get through the stack. And next week, we're going to do an anthology video specifically on the reformers. The reformers are the counterpoint to the derelicts, basically for people that do not appreciate heavy patina and funk and want something that is concourse perfect, yet evolved in the ICON manner. So stay tuned, subscribe, click like, and all those beautiful things that all the algorithms appreciate. And then I personally thank you certainly again for your time, your support.
Will it do a burnout? You know, I have a lot of faith in this whole heap.
Your energy and for appreciating our antics. My whole team thanks you. And we'll see you next week. Thanks again. Be well.